All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Monday, September 23rd. So only about one more week to go in September. I can't believe how hot it is in New York City. It's about like 90 degrees outside, which is really unusual for this time of year, but it is what it is. Quick risk disclaimer: everything in the video, information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. There is the disclaimer for you. So what do we have today? Well, we're still hanging around this 3,000 range in the S&P. This is S&P futures that I have up, but very similar levels to look at in the SPX itself or SPY. We are just stuck in a range right now, and I'm personally, kind of just waiting to see how this plays out. We'll look at some, I look at some shorter term levels. These are all things that are sent out to members pre-market on our private feed, but I'll go over just a couple of these levels that we were looking at. So here's where it gets a little bit different depending on what index that you're looking at. So if you're looking at S&P, we actually closed inside value for the week. So we'll see where this starts for tomorrow, but 29.94 will be the level to kind of watch, and it looks like we're rallying here a little bit. I see this going up a little bit further here, S&P futures, but that's going to be kind of the level in the sand to watch. If not, I really don't want to play with this market too much, other than having some, making sure that I've got some protection on if we end up going lower than 29.94, because we do have a virgin point of control down here, so something to be mindful of. We did bounce off of this bottom of value from last week. Again, this is the 1 hour level. The main thing to kind of note, besides that level, but also just to kind of note, this value area is very slim. So I do think at some point this week we should get a decent size move. I don't know what day that's going to occur, so we watch our levels and kind of go from there. But if we could get through 30.10, that would also get me a little bit more interested, even though we've still got more. We still have a battle to get through at 30.20. But I want to see this kind of get away from the bottom side of this. So that's what I'm kind of looking at for this morning. Sorry, not for this morning, but for this week. And I think if that does happen, you kind of want to think this out like a game of chess. Think your moves out a little bit. What is going to happen if we break that? I talked about this pre-market in the member pre-market session. Pre-market session this morning. We talked about what would happen down here. Basically, I would be a buyer down here at 29.44, and I really didn't trade that much today. I'll talk about a couple things that I've traded, but I just thought today was going to be choppy, so I just kind of stayed out of it. I put a lot of charts on the private Twitter feed today. Even though today was like not a day that I really traded very actively. There's still like plenty of things for me to kind of do. I pay attention to obviously option activity. We'll go over some of the bigger option trades for the day, but just to kind of look at setups, where would I care on certain names? I've got a couple of decent setups actually in some names that I don't have on yet. But again, like I said, I just didn't want to add a lot of risk right now until we kind of see how this week shapes up a little bit. So that's S&P. That's probably the best picture out of the three indices that I normally go over. Qs, and we can look at NQ here. Whoops. Look at NASDAQ futures. They actually did close right at value. So, okay, we don't really have a lot to go on here. We closed right at the bottom of value on that 1 hour. IWM, which was basically doing okay all day, actually finished in the red. There was a little bit of, I think, some market on close sell orders that kind of drifted us a little bit lower. But a good day, as I say quite frequently in the trading room, a good day to kind of feed the ducks, I think, for the most part. If it's just not there, sometimes you end up forcing trades. And you end up getting chopped up a little bit. And again, sometimes we get a few days like this, and obviously we have a few more than usual over the last week. But I think this will work its way out. You just have to be patient and wait for it. and set your alerts and kind of go from there. But IWM, yeah, finished red on the day. One area that I saw some strength, again, did not close on the highs, but was mid caps. I think some people tend to forget about the mid caps. That's MDY. Had a decent day. They bounced on the 20-day moving average again about like 2 o'clock today. They looked like they were going to have a nice bullish engulfing, but we didn't get that either. So there's, the point of the first few minutes of this video, not much to really hang your hat on. I think you just kind of have to let this play out a little bit more, wait for those signals as we're going through. You can tell I'm not really too enthused because I don't really have any major signals, to go long or short. So sometimes it's just how it is. Best thing you could do in that sense, I think, is just to kind of wait and be patient and wait for them to materialize. They usually do. You just have to wait a little bit. Again, today's action, looking at also bringing into the mix bonds. This is probably, if you're bullish equities, at one point bonds were up like 85 basis points. And we'll look at the long bond here. We won't look at TLT just like we did here. But you could see we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then number 6, and we have a doji that materialized here later in the day. So the long bond did finish in the green, but way off the highs. So we'll see if that's all the swing that this gets. For now, both ZB and I think let's look at TLT now are in value. So I would honor that for now. In value, so kind of back in the range. If they fall out, then that would be a sell signal. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then really the two areas that had really momentum to them were gold and silver. Gold finished up 1% on the day. Very nice. And there's some setups that have definitely materialized in here. Silver, which I've been long now for a couple weeks. Not a big, again, a small position. Most of what I'm trading right now is smaller than normal positions. But nice day in silver, up 4.9%. I was able to take a quick target in SLV at the end of the day. And I've been holding SLV calls since like the beginning, around the beginning of the month, somewhere in here, I think, into this support. And it's just lasted longer than I thought it would before we got that move. But some names did see some call activity. This is ECA, right? Am I thinking of the right name? I may not be. CDE. CDE is the name that we saw call activity in. There it is. I get these names confused sometimes. But similar price stock. But yeah, so if you're looking for something a little bit more speculative, small cap, only a $5 stock, almost $6. This is actually a pretty nice looking setup. You got a MACD crossover in CDE. I did not throw this one out on the private Twitter, but we saw calls come in multiple times today. You can kind of see how this developed, and I'll look at open interest tomorrow. Some of these, like the January 6s, had some open interest to them. March 8s were active early on. This January 6th came in later in the day, so you could see this was quite active during the day. Other areas, the silver miners. We talked about WPM, which is a name that I'm long in cash. Had a pretty decent day, up 2.5%. And if you didn't get involved here, you're coming right off the 50-day moving average, first day above value. So I like this here. Another name is Kirkland Gold, which had a really fine day today, up 5%. This ended up being a good buying opportunity. Went a little bit further south of the 50-day moving average, broke value for one day and popped back. So, going over gold and silver because these are the areas that had some momentum to them. Also on the top of the list was XME. Finished up 0.75% for the day, but really nice from low to high. I noticed there was a downgrade on X today. Not a name that I'm really involved in, but sometimes I just kind of note the price action. It actually went up on a downgrade. So, perhaps some of the bad news is finally priced in. Remember, this name warned on earnings last week. A name that's all the way back to 52-week lows, $11 in U.S. steel. But got a downgrade and actually finished up on the day. So, maybe the bottom is in for the short term. Yeah, I caught that a little bit earlier today. So yeah, steel names, one of the best performing groups for the day. Retail was strong. Gold miners were your best for the day finish. Again, this is from how they performed throughout the day from the open. And you could see a bit more names in the green and rallied versus names that sold off after the close. So again, mixed signals. I think while today wasn't a barn burner of a day, you could see the market breadth was actually okay for the day. And again, not a lot of things to really hang your hat on. The FANG stocks, they continue to kind of be a mess. We talked about them in the weekend member video. One of the points that I've made, because I think I saw a lot of people, talking about, hey, the FANG stocks are moving down. What's holding up this market? I would just go back to, and again, I spent talking more in detail about this, is that the FANG stocks have not shown market leadership for all year long, 2019. So it doesn't really bother me that they're still not managing to catch any momentum. Some of them look like they're breaking down, but I would not. That's not one of the things that I'm worried about, because the FANG stocks have not been exhibiting market leadership for quite some time. So I would not get hung up on that personally. There's plenty of other things to kind of worry about in this market, but that to me, I think if that's troubling you, then perhaps you don't have a wide enough universe of names that you're looking at. And again, members of Tribeca Trade Group, we know that I do look at the FANG stocks. I don't neglect them, but that's not really where I spend a lot of time on, unless they're behaving really great. If they've got momentum and they're showing market leadership and good trend, then I will concentrate there. But for the most part, you don't really see me trade them very often. Apple a little bit. Amazon I tried last week, didn't work, got out of it. Did I have two trades on in Amazon? I think I had one that worked, and then the second one did not work. So, and I took that off on Friday. So let's move on. We'll move on to today's option activity. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but so we'll start with AMD. This was a name you could say. It's pretty funny because you look at the daily chart and it still doesn't look like it's really moved much. But a lot of weekly calls went up. Sometimes we see this in a name where it just gets hit all day long with calls, and mostly weekly. So probably a lot of day trading going on in this name today. I got long on this name on, and I think I went over this on my Friday video, but I was holding AMD for a little while, and I was kind of trimming some risk, and I got out of it. Here's my stop out in Amazon that I mentioned. But I got out of it, and then I think we saw some call activity, and I'm like, well, that's how things work sometimes. As soon as you take them off, they end up trading. So I actually went right back into it, and glad I did. I was able to take a couple targets, not a huge winner, 240 taking some off. I forced another target a little bit later in the day as well, but a small winner, and that's kind of how it's been going right now for options. Silver. But that one saw, definitely a lot of that weekly, 800 contracts here, 900 there, 1,000 here. So, back 800, just kind of continuous throughout the day. Another name that doesn't, so again, this doesn't look bad. It's kind of almost coiled up here. And I'll be patient now that I hit a couple targets and maybe see if this thing can at least get to the point of control. Twitter saw some calls today as well. Small stuff. I mean, really small stuff. This doesn't look bad. It just doesn't. It's just lacking momentum, like most stocks right now. Top of value is right here. You could trade this stock if you like. I think again, whenever I have the option to trade stock, if it's like under $80, I will take that option because this market is just too choppy. And if stocks are not moving multiple days, you end up losing a lot of premium on the time decay that you've got go on. So again, Twitter just a $43 stock, and I think a better way to play it. I'm also long. That's in the TTG tactical portfolio. So another member there, and again, that had good performance today, outperforming the SPY today in the in the portfolio. A few other names that I was sending out. Floor and Decor, a name that has just been, another name that's just been kind of chilling out here. This one I would say is almost coiled. Really, where it's coiled is on the 1 hour. And we did see some call activity. I'll have to check open interest tomorrow in this one, but you could see it's trying to lean and get through $50. So again, setting an alert this way kind of keeps you from putting on every single position that we see option activity in, and we can kind of watch and see if that can break through $50. Wait for that to move first, and then go ahead and attack it. Salesforce, more call activity today. Very similar, choppy on the 1 hour, really kind of giving a nice view here. Maybe wait until it gets above. You can see I've got a trend line drawn. So again, if you want to start a position, you could do that, but it's not really giving any signal yet. SE, again, another name I have to check open interest on. A lot of October calls going up. This is a name that we've seen a lot of option activity over the last couple weeks. It is in value, so it managed to close in value. So I've been very patient with this one. I'm long January calls. I've been trying to take a target or two as we go along, just in case it skirts back out of value. But I'll say so far so good. MRO, this is the king of energy call buying. Marathon, they love to buy marathon calls. They've been buying marathon calls since all the way back here. The stock hasn't done much, so did I take the marathon call buyer today? No. If maybe it will work one day, but just looking at this was another. What did they buy here? Or am I thinking of a different name? Or was it MPC? Maybe I'm confusing. Maybe it's the other marathon that saw the call activity. Yes, it was MPC. So there's Marathon Oil and then there's Marathon Petroleum. Either one of them both have been seeing call activity and both have not worked. Maybe this time is different. Maybe if it gets above the 200-day moving average, there's November 60 calls right out of the money. Nice size trade, $1.4 million. Again, I'll try to be a little bit more objective, but I've been seeing call activity in MPC and MRO for the last 6 months and it hasn't worked. Maybe they'll finally get it to work and get out of trend. That's another one of the big trades. Vive, a couple other software names. Vive, which is a name that's really difficult in options, up 2% today. It actually did fairly well. I've been looking at Coupa software, and then I've got a nice setup coming for you. But Coop looks pretty good. It did close up 2% today, kind of where it started. I've been kind of complaining about these early moves in the day, and then they get faded. This one actually closed back and forth price movement. But again, if you held stock here, you don't have to worry about that back and forth movement so much, even though that was just intraday. But above right here, if it can hold, maybe this thing comes back out to 52-week highs. The name that I think is really interesting for like a short-term trade is Hubs. It's below the 200-day moving average, but remember, this is a name that had really good earnings, stalled out here, sold off with the rest of the software companies. Here's where it gets interesting. If you look at the 1 hour chart, look at how thin the value area is for this week. So right now, like I have an alert 163. I'm just above 163. But I think if it can get there, it could get to 170 very quickly if this thing catches a little bit of momentum. I discussed a call spread that you can do. I talked about that in the trading room. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. But these, unfortunately, it's a high price stock and the options are not cheap. So I picked out a nice looking call spread, good risk to reward for this one. I think Take Two also saw a little bit of action today. I think I'll bring up that trade because I forget what it was. I think we saw like some puts being sold, perhaps, and a call spread being bought, from my recollection. Maybe it was a put spread being sold and some calls being bought. A little bit. The name was a little bit under pressure today. Not that big of a trade there. So that's it. So again, there are some. There is some money being put to work, in the option world. But again, I like to really meld option activity and the technicals and kind of wait for things to kind of come around to signal an alert. The reason why I like to do that is because I think it provides a bit of an edge. As we know, a lot of trades that we see on the tape, option activity does not work. So if we kind of put that together with where you can kind of take a trade technically and where you can get out of it, you're providing, I think, a little bit of a little bit more edge than just straight up following option activity. All right, guys. So that's it for today's video. Again, the P word: be patient with this market. Kind of let it do what it wants to do for now. Wait until you see that leadership, come back in. I want to see the small caps bid. I would like to see. And again, it doesn't have to be the small caps, but just some momentum where we actually close on the highs, and for buyers to kind of come back into this market. All right, so I'll leave it there for the night. Have a great night, and see you tomorrow.